Hi, and welcome back to the WHVP podcast. In this episode of the podcast, Jamie Vrijhof-Droese sits down with Liebgott of AW Switzerland to discuss finding a registered investment advisor abroad. In this episode, they will discuss the due diligence of finding a registered investment advisor in a foreign jurisdiction, in particular Switzerland. They'll also talk about why Switzerland is so attractive for banking and investing, how Americans can prepare themselves for the administration side of opening an account, the motivation of holding assets in Switzerland, and the importance of finding a registered investment advisor that is registered with the SEC. Now, let's get into it.
Hello and welcome, and I'm so excited to have you here today on our podcast. It is a special treat to have you here because we go way back. We have met, I would say, in another time, in another place, and now our paths cross again because we are both working or dealing with the US-Swiss cross-border business. How about we start by you just introducing yourself quickly to our audience, where you're coming from and how we ended up at where you're currently at.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. I'd like to start out actually by congratulating you and WHVP and the whole team to winning not just one, but three Swiss Wealth Briefing Awards this year, especially the one for the best female executive. I think you could be very proud of yourself to achieve that already.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's very sweet of you. Yeah, okay, we're quite happy and proud.
Yeah, that's well earned, well earned. My name is Liebgott. I am the founder of a Swiss online platform called AW Switzerland. It lists Swiss wealth management services focused on US clients and Canadian clients, both domiciled in the US and Canada, as well as around the world.
And how did you end up in the line of business? I mean, it's quite a specific niche area, if you so will, here in Switzerland. So what made you interested, or how did you come up with the idea?
Actually, I came up with the idea, and that's where we first crossed our paths, with this international insurance broker who was offering Swiss insurance policies and policies out of Liechtenstein to American clients. And I spoke in this, working with them at that time, I spoke with approximately 250 American clients who were very interested in getting established in Switzerland. Not all were so keen on the insurance-based solution, but they really wanted to get established in Switzerland to hold some of their funds offshore or in another diversification. And they didn't know how to get started. They didn't know where to go. They didn't know who to talk to and so on. So I actually, at that time, I decided to write a book on the subject because I've written books before. And as I'm writing the outline of the book, I realized, hey, this day and age, we have to make an online platform for this topic because it can be adjusted and be expanded on and can be changed and as time goes by. So that's going back about 7 years ago now. And yeah, it's here to stay.
Wow, that's wonderful. So 7 years is quite a long time. Congratulations on all that you have done there. I'm always quite impressed with how active you are and how interactive you are in the whole community and how much useful information you put out there. So maybe you can also tell us a little bit about your personal background, because you also have a very interesting mix of different countries and nationalities in growing up and where you're from. Would you mind telling us a bit more about that as well?
Oh, I can tell you about that. It's actually quite a combination. You're right. Okay, I was born in Canada. I was born in Vancouver. I grew up in Canada in Vancouver area and then the Toronto area, and moved from there to the United States outside of Chicago, where I spent 3.5 years. And from there moved on to Switzerland. I spent all of my summer vacations in Europe because my parents are both originally from Europe, from Denmark, actually. And I always had this idea that I would spend my adult life in Europe, and it came to be. And so I've been in Switzerland now for ages and ages. And I rarely go back to the States or Canada now on travels because I spend a lot of time here in Europe. I have 3 homes, and so I'm going between one and the other. And yeah, speak several languages, and I'm enjoying life in Switzerland very much.
I would love to hear more about what you like about Switzerland, what you like living here. But before we dive into that, I would also be interested in hearing, those 7 years is quite a long time to be working on a project like you're working on. So maybe you can go into, have there been major changes that you have seen for Americans that are interested in diversifying outside of their home country, moving part of their money into Switzerland? Have you seen ebbs and flows of interest, or is it more or less constant? What has changed on your platform? Do you see a different kind of demand, or would you say it's overall pretty stable?
Okay, first of all, I think what has changed over the years is that it has become easier for an American to get established in Switzerland. There are also several players. If you want to say, you look at the big banks, for example, that have their US based entities, and then you have larger independent Swiss wealth managers that have decided to work with American clients. And then you have smaller enterprises. I'm very impressed by yours for WHVP because you're a family-based enterprise. I think that's very exceptional. And I think that's fantastic that you were able to take over the company from your father, who I know also. We also go back a long time. Yeah. And in general, it kind of ebbs and flows a little bit because in times of crisis, pandemia was a special case as well. People tend to then view Switzerland as a place to be, as a place to hold assets safely, as a place to, plan for the future, kind of like this be prepared saying that we have, like from the Girl Guides way back when. And so when crisis appears on the horizon, there's always a heightened interest in moving assets to Switzerland. And like I said, it's gotten easier over time. One can also do it online. One doesn't have to travel to Switzerland anymore to do it. And you can do the research, you can get to know your investment advisor. WHVP, one of the prizes you also won was for client communication and for digital presence and so on. And that's just the way to go these days. People can really do a lot of research online and they can find who they'd like to work with easier than it was in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the research point is very important and something that we also put a lot of emphasis on, because it can be emotionally daunting to do your due diligence on people or companies in other country, maybe a country that you have never visited yourself. What would be your advisor tips on how people can go about that? What do people have to ask? What do they have to think about? And how can they obtain the information that they need to make a decision for themselves and their families?
Okay. Actually, the internet is the core of all of this that we're talking about, because there you can check out, do something simple like checking out the company's website and so on. Of course, the SEC registration, which Swiss wealth managers need to have to be able to serve US clients. There's the SEC registration itself. There's the ADV Part 2 brochure. There's the ADV Part 3 brochure, which can be accessed online. And that is actually a great step in doing homework. But then, of course, that's just the first step. That's your basic, I'll check them out before I get into contact. Now, once you get into contact, that's where the personal chemistry actually comes to play. That's where you feel, are we on the same, speaking the same language? Are we on the same table? Are we talking about the same thing? Are they listening to me as an investor? Are they answering my questions completely and thoroughly? Do they even understand what my questions are? And so on. And I think that's this feeling, this comfort level that you need to have if you're going to be working with a registered investment advisor in Switzerland. It's not any much different than from the United States, because in the United States, you also have to feel comfortable with your asset manager. Now, if you're just a small client in a big firm, you're basically just a number, right? In the United States as well. You're basically just one of thousands there. And this is a difference in Switzerland with a company like yourself, like WHVP. You take a much more personal approach to the relationships that you have, with the idea of it's long-term, it's more personal, it's individualized, and you actually do take the time to listen to your clients' needs and desires and plans for the future, and their problems as well. There's sometimes problems pop up, and with generational wealth transfer and all this kind of stuff. And that's the difference between working with a domestic investment advisor being a small number in a big firm or working with a very personalized company like yourself?
Well, yeah, I think that's a very good synopsis of how like an independent company or like a small family-run business differs from one of the larger banks. And that's something that we also emphasize a lot when we talk to people, that they understand how the personalization really makes a difference. I also like to go back to Switzerland as a country to live in as an expat, as you're doing yourself, or also as an investor. Why is Switzerland such a popular place for banking, in your opinion, and also such a popular place for people to live in? What sets Switzerland apart, or what are some of the thoughts and ideas why an American would even move part of their money abroad? Because there's also independent advisors in the US, right?
Right. Well, first of all, Switzerland is, like I mentioned before, in times of crisis, Switzerland really proves that it's a resilient country. Their banking system is resilient. This has been proved over and over again. And it's not any different today, and it probably won't be any different tomorrow. And so that's just this whole sense of long-term stability and long-term economic stability as well. And even in the pandemic, even though, of course, that cost every country a lot of money, if you want to put it just in that flat term, Switzerland still standing strong without having a dent in its economy, really. And there's a little small dent, just a small one, in comparison to other countries around the world. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is that we have strict privacy laws. Even though things have become more transparent over time, there's still strict privacy laws. We maintain the highest level of privacy that's possible. And we still have the banking secrecy, in the sense of that employees of banks and of wealth managers and so on are not allowed to divulge any information on their clients at all. So if there's a criminal offense and the other governments go through the normal process of requesting information and legal help and so on, their information can be passed on in case of a criminal situation. But otherwise, in Switzerland, it's very discreet.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if someone does decide that might be something for them, and they reach out to several people, talk to them, check out their brochures and their websites and all of those things, what do they have to expect in terms of like the account opening process? Are there some documents that they need to have ready? Is there some information that they could prepare in order to move forward? Do you feel comfortable telling us a little bit more about this administrative side of things as well?
Yes, well, like I said, it's easier done than it used to be. It used to be that you had to travel to Switzerland to be able to open up an account. Now it can be done online or over the internet. Documents that are required, of course, every wealth manager, you know it even better than I do. They have to do their know your client process. They have to do the due diligence. They have to make sure that the funds are coming from legal sources. And there's documentation that's required there. In the US, particularly, it can be a little bit more let's say complex, because a lot of times Americans use trusts. And so trusts are involved, and there's a whole slew of trust documents that need to be supplied to be able to open up the account. But the good thing is that a Swiss wealth manager like yourself, you will monitor the process every step of the way. So the clients aren't just left hanging there with the bank and trying to figure it out yourself. It's that they are accompanied really every step of the way. And if there's questions or if additional documentation is needed and so on, it will be found out immediately, and the process will be done as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. I think that's a really important point. Even though there are some steps to go through, I mean, it is an administrative process after all that is very helpful if you have someone to guide you through all of that and help you and just lend a little bit of support and understanding and help in that process. So what do you say? Sorry, are you about to say something?
I just wanted to add something also that's also part of the administration. Of course, as an American, you have your FBAR reporting of a foreign financial account, and you have tax obligations and so on. And you will receive the documents from the bank directly actually. But here again, that's where the Swiss wealth manager like yourself comes in, where you make sure the documents are issued in a timely manner, you answer any questions that there are, and you can point them in the right direction of how to get these obligations done in a timely manner. So there's no surprises down the road, and not something like, oh, I forgot, or I didn't know, and so on. Now that's a little bit different in the United States, where they don't have these reporting requirements for these assets, and a US based tax advisor or wealth advisor is usually doesn't know anything about this, because it's not their regular line of business. So that's why it's important to have a professional in Switzerland to be able to guide through all these matters. One is, like I said, establishing the account, and the other one is what comes after that, the reporting requirements, and so on and so on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think a great motivation for an American to hold assets in another jurisdiction, and Switzerland just happens to be the global leader in this area, is that you have to think ahead. And you saw in Canada, as an example, they had accounts frozen because the prime minister was not happy with these truckers demonstrating against COVID regulations and things like that. And you never know what happens if all of a sudden, the accounts get frozen for some reason. And this way, if you're holding assets in another jurisdiction, you always have access to some assets just outside of your regular banking system. And that's just a smart move. That's just a prudent move. Now, if you decide with this account, you decide to have a wealth preservation strategy, or you're into a strong growth strategy and want to profit from, for example, worldwide stocks that are not available to you in the US, or whatever the case may be, that's your choice. That depends on your, risk tolerance, your age, your future plans, and things like that. But this whole idea of just holding some assets outside of your regular jurisdiction is just a prudent strategy to have.
Absolutely. I fully agree. And I think the whole topic of taxes and documentation that you brought up, that also is a great reminder to just tell people that they have to look out to be working with an independent asset manager that is registered with the SEC, because there are some that would be willing to take on an American if they only have a few. I think they can do that without a license, but it's just very important that, especially for Americans, that they work with someone that understands their government's way of working, their tax system, and that they know what to look out for, because you can get in a lot of trouble if you're not reporting your accounts properly.
Of course, you have to be impeccable in your reporting and things like that. So that's where this high quality Swiss service also comes in, that the Swiss people in general are actually, committed to this quality of excellence in their client services.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can people go if they would like to reach out to you or learn more about your various endeavors? Is there a website or an email address that you can provide?
Yes, but before I get into that, I would like to make a few comments about why it's so great to live in Switzerland, because you've asked me already.
Right, that's true.
And so I'd like to say that. Well, Switzerland, of course, it's a very, very small country. We're in the heart of Europe. Just for practical living purposes, I mean, things run smoothly in Switzerland most of the time. We have Germany, France, Italy, and Liechtenstein, and so on all around us. So if you want just to go a day trip here or a day trip there, something like that, it's easy to do. And you're in a different culture with a different language, with a different cuisine, things like that. We have a beautiful landscape. I mean, you love to go running in the Alps yourself, so you've seen it all the time. I spend a lot of time in the Davos area. I do a lot of fly fishing. And so I'm out in the great outdoors all the time. And it's so easy. I, get in the car and 1.5 hours from Zurich, we're already there in the middle of nature. And those are a lot of benefits that Switzerland has for their population. We have 4 different languages. We have all kinds of international schools. There's all kinds of international clubs. So even when an American or a Canadian decides to move to Switzerland, they're not going to be lonely. There's all kinds of places they can go and clubs and people they can meet and things like that. So it's actually very, very homogenous society that runs rather peacefully and rather smoothly. And it's the sense of reliability that actually is very calming, because you don't feel that something is going to change tomorrow and then change again the next day.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. What beautiful final goodbye words.
Yeah, okay. Well, my platform is available at americanswelcome.swiss, and it pays to take a look and browse around. There's all kinds of wealth management services on there, including citizenship and residence planning. So in case anybody does feel like trying to, check it out, what Switzerland has to offer as a place of residence. And yeah, so I think that all in all, Switzerland can be considered a gem in comparison to a lot of other countries around the world. Of course, we're always hoping to maintain that status and working hard towards it. We don't have these expectations that our government has to do everything for us. We actually are willing and able to contribute on a daily basis to make Switzerland the country that it is.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your knowledge and expertise. It was really a pleasure to have you on, and I'm looking forward to the next time we're going to see us.
Okay, thank you. Bye, Jamie.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again for joining us on the WHVP podcast. We hope you found it enjoyable and insightful. If you would like to learn more about what we do at WHVP and how we might help you achieve your financial goals, check us out at our website at whvp.ch, or find us at any of our social media handles at LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube by simply searching WHVP. Have a great rest of your week.